I'm Ed Raby, otherwise known as the Rabid Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the videos you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would hit your notification bell and subscribe to the channel so you can get more content as it is released. I always appreciate every new subscriber. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is to educate in regards to atheist issues, which involve also biblical studies, theology, and deconversion issues. If you are a person who has deconverted from a faith, you are welcome here. And we can talk about some of the issues that we have as people who have deconverted. Today, I'm going over... Here, I can't do this. Over my other shoulder, you'll see my political science degree. And I'm kind of hitting that a little bit today, but also a little bit about religion. And here in the United States, we've had the death of one Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so a lot of religious people are now kind of chomping at the bit, hoping that Trump will appoint somebody in her place that's a little bit more conservative. And so far, the two candidates I've seen are definitely much more conservative. What are everybody's concerns on the left side of the aisle with this? Well, number one, some of them are concerned that Roe v. Wade will be overturned, where a suit, and it will go, then it will, what happened before Roe v. Wade is states made the decision of whether abortion was going to be legal in their state or not. And that would be a tremendous reversal. A lot of states, you wouldn't see too much change. I'm fairly certain that a good chunk of them would still have abortions. It would drop kick it back to a state by state fight. Kind of the way marijuana has been. Marijuana has slowly but surely been legalized in a lot of states, and now the federal government is like, yeah, it's getting real hard to enforce these federal laws. And that's kind of the way it works. The states kind of balance out the federal government because there's so many of them. And to me, that's a good thing. All right. But the other concern that a lot of atheist channels I've been watching lately, and some of their titles, I haven't had no chance to watch everybody, is they're concerned about the separation of church and state issues. And as an atheist, I'm also concerned about those. Just to make my viewpoint abundantly clear, I do not believe that the church should have anything to do with government. I don't think they should pray before anything. I don't think there should be, a led, organized prayer by a public official in schools. People have always misinterpreted that goal, that law. And what happened there was, they basically said, listen, it's fine if kids want to pray on their own, but you're not allowed to lead them in a public prayer. That's a violation. You're acting in your official capacity as a state educator. You're not allowed to do that. It hasn't stopped prayer in schools because kids still meet around the flagpole and they're allowed to do that. And I know of when I was on the school board, I'd walk through the school from time to time and I would see kids rallied, Christian kids would get in groups of 5 and pray before the start of a day. So it didn't stop prayer in schools. What it stopped is school officials, teachers, and administrators leading prayers in an official capacity. No, you're not allowed to do that. A lot of people think that might be reversed, allowing teachers to lead prayers in schools again in an official capacity. I'm not really sure that will hold up. It's going to take a specific case to hit the Supreme Court for that to happen. And so a lot of people are worried because this does kind of pack the court to the right a little bit. Right now, there are 5 conservative justices, and with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, there are 3 liberal ones. And so a lot of people, and Roberts, the Chief Justice Roberts, has not always sided with the conservatives. And so he actually, in my opinion, has become more and more my hero because he seems to be much more conscientious about what the Constitution actually says than following a political ideology. And so I can applaud that. As a libertarian, I can applaud that. So this is kind of where everybody, the religious people are chomping at the bit to get Trump to do this third appointment, and liberals are fighting against it. Now, I'm probably going to have a very unpopular opinion, even though I believe in the separation of church and state when I talk about the politics of this. When Obama faced the same opportunity 4 years ago, and he was 9 months out when Anthony Scalia died. Anthony Scalia was a conservative justice. And so a lot of people, the Republican Senate said, we should let the people decide who's going to win the election, and then that person can pick it, and not you. You've already picked two. And oddly enough, Ruth Bader Ginsburg kind of agreed with them. But she also said, he doesn't stop being the president simply because he's in his last year. He still has the right to make these appointments with the advice and consent of the Senate. And so the Democrats at that time, who did control the Senate, at the time, I believe, basically said, screw the rules. We're not going to require the 60 things to bring this to a vote. We approve of his choice, and bingo, one of his people got on. So that kind of set the tone that when it comes to Supreme Court justices, the whole filibuster rules don't apply. The trying to get 60 senators to sign on to agree to vote on the issue doesn't apply. You just need a simple majority. And so the Senate, the Republicans who are now in charge of the Senate, remember that. And they're like going, yeah, we're going to push this through. And if Trump wants to appoint somebody, we're going to let him have it. I'm going to say this to you Democrats out there and you liberals. You really have to be careful what tactics you do and allow, because the other side can use them against you. If you can't conceive of how it could be damaging for the other side to have what you're doing in their pockets, then you're a lousy politician. Okay, you're not good at it. Okay, because the one thing you should ask yourself every time you take power and use it is, would I be comfortable if somebody I absolutely disagreed with had this power? Would I be comfortable with them doing what I'm doing? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't do it. Okay? The real truth about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and this is me, this is my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. 4 years ago, when Obama was, still president, Ruth Bader should have retired. But she didn't retire because she said Obama has already picked two, including the one that was late in his last year of his term. And I don't think he should be allowed to pick three. So I'm going to stay on and see who wins the election. I don't think anybody conceived of the fact that Trump was going to win the election. So it kind of blew everybody away when the Electoral College numbers came out and the popular vote was the other direction. That happens. I believe in the Electoral College because it protects the states with less population from being basically ruled by the ones with big population. People ask me about this country. I keep reminding them, we have 50 states. This is really a very tight alliance between 50 countries, if you really think about it. We have very lax border regulations between these countries. But when you really look at it, that's what it is. And these states have their rights, and everybody sits as equals. This is why we are bicameral, which means, we have the House of Representatives, which is based on population. We have Senate, where everybody has two representatives. This is also why the Electoral College exists along the same lines. Okay, and population is still taken into account. The more populated states still have more Electoral College votes because of the amount of representatives. So it doesn't change that at all. But here's the thing. After that election, I think a lot of people were shocked, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was fighting various diseases at the time, was kind of taken aback. But what she should have done, if she had been a little bit more forward thinking on this, she would have said, you know what, I need to retire now so Obama can replace me. That way this won't happen. Had she done that, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. But because of this belief, I guess, that no president should do more than three, here we are. Trump's already done two, and he's going to do three. Okay, so your wishful thinking that that's not going to happen doesn't mean it should. You have to look at the Constitution and say what is allowed and what is not allowed. It doesn't matter what the time of year is or the time. It's whoever's in power gets to make these decisions. If the thought of the Republicans being in charge of the White House bothers you and you're getting old as a justice, you might want to retire so that the guy that you agree with that's in the White House gets to make the decision on who your replacement is, especially if you're getting up there. I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but Trump has every right to do what they're doing, and so does the Republican Senate. And the fact that the Democrats kind of pushed it through 4 years ago and did the exact same thing kind of makes them hypocrites. And this is the real problem. This is why I'm a libertarian and I'm going to be voting Porcupine, aka Libertarian Party this time, because I don't like either one of them. Is because they play these games and they'll literally flip-flop their positions depending on who's being elected. And it just drives me mad. There's no principle anymore. There's no, what are you fighting for? What is it, fair play, whatever. I mean, if the Republicans said this 4 years ago, they should still be saying it, but they don't say it. They flip. Okay. But at the same time, I see that it's justified because, the Democrats did it when they talked about Scalia. So what I'm saying here is, you have the right to do these things, and that's where it becomes problematic. See, because the issue is going to be going forward, the First Amendment. Now, the First Amendment has a lot of stuff in it. Okay. It has, you can't establish the Anti-Establishment Clause, which says you can't establish a state religion. It's on this basis that a lot of atheists say, listen, you shouldn't have 10 commandments on courthouse lawns. You shouldn't have prayer before meetings. You should, swearing on the Bible. That's bullshit. I'd agree with that. Because, you're putting religion into the state and it just shouldn't be there. On the flip side, it says Congress can't make a law infringing the free exercise of religion. And a lot of atheists don't like that, but I do. I'm one of those people that said, no, don't tax the churches, because the moment you tax them, they're going to bitch that they have no voice. You're taking their money, but you're not allowing them to speak in the pulpit for the candidates they want. The moment you start taxing the church's money, they have a legitimate beef saying, yeah, you're taking my money and then you're telling me I can't talk about it. How would you feel if they suddenly taxed you 20% more, but they didn't allow you to have any say, including voting about how that money is dealt with? Wouldn't you be pissed off? Yeah, you'd be pissed off. It's aggression. Okay, you're basically stealing or taking somebody more money, and you're not allowing to have even a say of how it's spent. And that's wrong. Okay, so you can't gag the churches with laws saying you can't speak to these things and then turn around and take their money. If you're going to take their money, then you have to let them speak. Okay, and we can have that debate all day. But there's other things in the First Amendment that have, and this is my beef with atheists lately, especially with COVID-19. The First Amendment has no exception clauses, none. You can't interfere with somebody's free exercise, and you can't interfere with their right to assemble. To peacefully assemble, you can't do either one of those things. And when Christians meet on churches on Sunday, they're doing both of those things. They're exercising both those rights. And the government really has no authority based on the Constitution to stop them. I think those laws that have been passed to prohibit people from meeting on Sunday are illegal. They're unconstitutional. That's my opinion. Okay. Now you might argue, well, they're threatening us. I said, well, are they really? I know, like, the Friendly Atheist has been after these churches, and a bunch of other atheist people are going after them. They shouldn't be meeting. They're spreading COVID. Yeah, they only account for 0.02% of COVID cases and deaths, period. There's far other places that have bigger problems and bigger issues and provide a larger percentage. If you're going to yell at them, also for those of you atheist channels, I'm going to point out some hypocrisy here. If you're saying the science says that meeting and gathering is a way to spread COVID, that means all gatherings. You don't get to make an exception clause because this political activist group agrees with your politics. If you're going to say by science nobody should meet, then you should be bitching about the BLM rallies, the churches getting together, any place where there's a large group of people gathering together. You should be bitching about it equally in the name of science. If you're going to make special pleading for any group, any of them, then that's what it is. It's special pleading. Now all of a sudden you're saying this group is allowed to meet because this is important. The First Amendment doesn't allow you to do that. You either say everybody has the right to peacefully assemble and protest, no exceptions, or you say nobody is. The problem is the First Amendment says everybody is allowed to and the government can't stop them. People don't like it. but that's what it says. Okay, so when people yell at me as an atheist, I said, no, I believe in freedom. I personally believe, I think if we had had freedom of action, like if you said, hey, we have this disease spreading through our country, these are the things that'll make your business safe. We're going to give you a tax break for every one of these you implement. How many business owners would have jumped all over that? Doesn't matter what your business is. I mean, this is why a lot of governors are getting in trouble in court right now, is because they made very arbitrary rules. We're going to let this business run and this one not run. And the businesses are very similar. Okay, and so that's why they're getting sued under arbitrary and capricious clauses. So my opinion on that goes something like this. You could have avoided all that and still been scientific and still respected freedom by saying, listen, if you're a business, we need you to, this is dangers of the disease as we understand it at the present time. These are the things that we believe you can do to make your business safer. And for this year, if you implement some of these things in your store, like social distancing, making your customers wear masks, things like that, we will give you a tax break. I'm going to tell you right now, you wouldn't have had as major a plug of your economy. And two, you would have had a lot of businesses complying all over the board because they want the money. If you tap into people's selfishness, they have a tendency to react to that. The problem is when you shut down their businesses, it's more of a selfish thing for them to fight against you. But if you say you're allowed to stay open with certain guidelines, and if you follow these guidelines, we'll give you a break. I don't know of too many businesses that wouldn't jump at that. And the few that won't, then they would be out there advertising going, hey, we're safer than this guy because we're doing this, this, and this. And he's only doing this and this and not the last one. It changes the game. The businesses then have an incentive to do what they need to do. Instead of this heavy-handed government policy, which doesn't work. People ask me, what do I think the effectiveness of government is? I said, most of the time, it's the same effectiveness as God. And I don't believe God exists. Okay, so the only difference between God and government to me is I can actually prove the government exists. Okay, they interfere with my life on a regular basis. So that's about all I can do. But that's really kind of the issue. Now, why am I so adamant about letting Christians and the religious do their thing? Because if I'm going to be absolute on the anti-establishment clause, if I'm going to sit there and say absolutely no religion inside of state functions, if I'm going to be that absolutist about that, okay, proper interpretation then is if I'm going to interpret that line that way, then I have to be absolutist about free exercise. I have to be absolutist about freedom of the press. I have to be absolutist about freedom to assemble. I have to be absolutist about freedom of speech. If I'm going to be bitching about the idea that no church should be inside of a government building preaching their crap, then I also have to say, and you guys meeting on Sunday, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's the problem. If you're going to sit there and say there can be no exceptions for the church separation of church and state, and then turn right around and say, oh, but the freedom to express your religion and your freedom to meet and gather and assemble is conditional. That's not really rights. That's a condition. That's a privilege. But the anti-establishment clause is a right. Then you're being inconsistent and you're being hypocritical. If you're going to sit there and say, well, to gather together and exercise your religion are conditional, then you've opened up the possibility that the anti-establishment clause is also conditional. And this gets back to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her replacement. If it's conditional, then the anti-establishment clause is basically defined by the legislature and whatever the Supreme Court will allow. Instead of hinging on the absolute wording of the Constitution like you could as an atheist, you've undercut that argument. And this is the problem with a lot of atheists out there. I love you all. It's amazing how reasonable and cerebral you are when it comes to taking on creationists, when it comes to taking on various other scientific issues and upholding science and reason. But when it comes to politics, you lose your brains. You need to think these things through. Because if you're going to sit there and say, okay, you can't have religion in anything government, in anything state, which I agree with, then this government can't be in anything religious as long as those religions aren't violating the rights of a person. Which means the government can't restrict religious gatherings. It can't restrict religious expression in any form. Can't do it. As long as it's peaceful, as long as protests are peaceful, can't stop them. Don't have to like it, but you can't stop them. You're restricted from doing so. Can't stop the press from talking about it. Can't stop people from, filing grievances with their government. Can't do it. Not allowed. Oh, the court's closed today. You're not allowed to file grievances. Oh, no, not allowed. See, the moment you take an absolutist stance on one phrase in that First Amendment, you have to interpret the rest of it the same way. And I don't think atheists are consistent on this. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. I mean, I know in a lot of other countries, I have fans in the UK and other things, and so the rules are different. I have, as a libertarian, I have far different observations about the UK than probably most UK people, except libertarians in the UK, probably. But maybe I'll get into that another time. But the issue with the Constitution of the United States, particularly the First Amendment, is freedom. You are allowed to freely do things, and the government can't stop you. And once you begin to understand that about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you really realize how little the Founding Fathers trusted government. Now, I think there are some anarchists out there that would say, yeah, they made a mistake of saying it was a necessary evil, and they should have just said it's just evil and we just need to get rid of it. The problem with anarchism, it's a beautiful and wonderful philosophy, don't get me wrong. It also requires that everybody holds the philosophy of anarchism, and that will never happen. And as long as that will never happen, there's going to be some sort of state. And as long as there's some sort of state, we probably should figure out how to keep that state from interfering with people's rights. So I know this is probably not a popular opinion among atheists, but you need to understand that much like the Democrats did 4 years ago, they didn't ever think that the Republicans would be in a similar situation, but here they are. And now they've set precedent, and they can't stop it because if they bitch about it, they're just being hypocrites. Now, of course, the Republicans are being hypocrites too by saying, well, we shouldn't, the election should decide. Well, the Democrats didn't elect the election side, so the Republicans are just saying, hey, we're just doing what you did. Okay, we don't like it. They could reasonably say they don't like it, but they're going to do it. And now we're in this mess, okay? The real problem, I think, with American politics is nobody thinks long-term about what they're saying, and they certainly don't stop and sit back and think. And to all my atheist tubers and everybody else out there, all my other atheist friends that get out there and talk this stuff, I simply have one question for you. If you're going to maintain absolute separation of church and state based on the First Amendment, how do you avoid an absolute interpretation of the freedom of expression, of the freedom to assemble, the freedom to grieve, to speech and the press? How do you stop that? You can't. Either you're going to have to say that separation of church and state is conditional, and thus the rest are conditional, in which case, as a libertarian, I would argue they're not really rights then, they're just privileges. Or you're going to have to say, yep, you know what, I don't like the fact that churches are meeting on Sunday. They have a right to meet on Sunday, and I don't think the government should be allowed to stop them. And that's kind of where it is. I want to thank you for sticking around. I know this is probably a little bit different video, but I think the religious politics thing comes up every once in a while, and I'm happy to provide my opinion such as it is, my humble opinion. And I could be wrong. I'm just expressing that this is the way I see it. Once again, thank you for stopping by on the channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit your notification bell, share the videos. The more you do, the more that this increases the visibility of the channel. So I appreciate that. And until such time as we meet again, hopefully someday I can persuade you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Raby, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.